Diamondvale, Shattered Memories. By Eric Hua. Chapter 25, Rain. Myla was urging the scientist to pick up the pace. He told everything to Myla and they needed to stop what was about to transpire. As they were making their way, the ground shook momentarily and they also saw a huge flash of light. Myla was confused, but Vihaan knew that Arnov and Dante were the ones responsible. Vihaan had a sudden burst of speed as he passed Myla. She yelled for him to wait up as they ran towards the light. There was another sparring exchange between the three fighters. Although Arnov and Dante were sweating like before, they could sense something off about their opponent. His movement seemed slower and more predictable. On the other side, Rice was concealing something from the two fighters. Something was hindering his strength, but he ignored it and focused on the battle. Arnov and Dante both charged from the front, hoping to overpower their foe. Rice responded by stomping his foot on the ground and throwing a punch. The force behind the attack sent Dante flying, but Arnov held on by driving his sword to the ground. Once the attack wore off, Arnov threw his shield at Rice, who easily slipped through. He then appeared close to Arnov, pressuring his former student with a combination of jabs to prevent him from swinging his sword. Rice threw a cross right at Arnov's chest, but he managed to block with his sword. Arnov was pushed back and Rice was about to strike again until he sensed Dante hovering in the air behind him. The cyborg had Arnov's shield and he threw it in Rice's direction. It should have been a routine dodge for Rice, but he had a slight cough, so the shield nicked a piece of his clothing. Whatever he was hiding was starting to take effect on the surface. Arnov had successfully claimed his shield thanks to Dante's effort. He then held it in front and advanced towards his opponent. The shield made contact with Rice's hands and that began a pushing match between the two combatants. Initially, their strength seemed equal, but over time, Arnov's strength was starting to give out. Rice was pushing back with Arnov about to fall on his knees. He was about to be crushed until Dante charged in from Rice's blind side with his arm transformed into a bladed weapon. Rice's attention was now directed at Dante, which allowed Arnov to get back on his feet and grip his sword properly. Now Rice was facing both his opponents who were planning to strike him simultaneously. He was ready to counter their attacks, and when they clashed, the battle was over. Arya, who had been unconscious during the whole fight, suddenly woke up as if she had experienced a terrible nightmare. She had the feeling that someone she knew had passed away. At about the same time, Vihaan and Myla had just appeared. Myla was glad to see Arya conscious, but she wasn't prepared to witness what had happened near Dante and Arnov. With the lesser geode mutants dispersed and Dylan back to human form, Devon went to search for Saman while Jacob stayed to see if he could help Sahil. Devon found Saman lying on the ground, buried by some debris in his monkey form. He removed the stones in his way so he could retrieve the monkey to safety. Meanwhile, Max put Dylan on his back and began to carry him. As he was returning to join the others, the rain began to pour down heavily. They all looked up at the sky and somehow they all shared a similar feeling. Someone that they knew was no longer physically in this world. Elsewhere, Ajay and Civic each put one of Amrita's arms over their shoulder. Together they carried their classmate to safety. It didn't take long before the sky was filled with grey clouds and rain poured down on them. They too felt the weight of losing someone they knew. With Ashima's medical expertise, she managed to stabilize Cece. Harshitha was ready to carry her on her back when a massive downpour of rain appeared. Netanya put up her force field to provide cover for everyone. Even though they couldn't feel the raindrops on their skin, they shared the feeling of losing someone they knew. Kira and Leo were trapped in a corner against the endless mobs of geode mutants. They thought they were goners until the rain began to pour down. The mindless mutants suddenly lost their will to fight. They slowly drifted away, leaving Kira and Leo alone. The little rogue was about to celebrate how lucky they had gotten, but when she turned around, she saw Leo sitting still and looking up to the rainy sky, knowing someone he had known was no longer around. Willyham felt something trying to get his attention. He opened his eyes and saw Barman gently headbutting his shoulder. Finally, Willyham got up to rub his eyes, and when he was done, he found Ardie, Vihaan, Myla, Arnov, and Dante all standing in the monsoon. He was glad to see everyone, but he felt something was wrong. He approached them to ask what happened. Most of them couldn't find the words to speak, but Dante told Willyham that they needed to move forward and find Headmaster Volis. Willyham didn't speak any further, but he felt anxious not knowing anything. As Arnov, Myla, and Ardie followed behind Dante's lead, Vihaan walked beside Willyham and shared with him the event that took place not long ago. 30 minutes earlier, Dante and Arnov were about to strike at Rice from two directions. Rice was confident he could counter both their attacks. However, his body was acting up and he began coughing. For a moment, Rice was completely vulnerable. Arnov and Dante could feel something was wrong, but they couldn't stop their momentum. Arnov's sword and Dante's blade pierced through Rice's body. Arnov released his grip from the sword and Dante detached his blade from his arm. They immediately caught him before he could fall to the ground. Rice let out a laugh and he told both Arnov and Dante that they passed the test. The two warriors were shouting as they wanted to know what happened to his body. Vihaan had arrived and he attempted to explain everything. That was when Dante pieced it together. He realized now that Rice pretended to be the enemy to draw out his and Arnov's powers. Arnov was about to speak, but Rice's cough returned and it was worse than before. In addition to the coughing, the skin on his right arm was deteriorating. Dante scanned Rice's body to find that his condition was nearing fatal. While the cyborg and Knight were confused, Vihaan knew it was because of the experiment he volunteered to help Volis with. Dante aggressively grabbed Vihaan by the collar of his lab coat, demanding to know what the scientist did, but Rice told the cyborg to let go. Right after, Myla rushed in unexpectedly and kicked Rice in the ribs. She was fuming, yet at the same time, tears were dropping from her eyes. Rice had a smile and his students couldn't believe how he could still be joking at a time like this. The infection was spreading and it was about to overtake him. When Dante saw that his condition had reached fatal in a short duration, he was reminded of Ardie. He feared for her condition, but Rice held a vial with a concoction that only Vihaan knew about. It was a serum that fooled them into thinking Ardie was in danger. Rice explained that the effects should be wearing off. In his final moment, he told everyone to continue to grow strong, because they would be no help to anyone if they became weak. Myla continued to yell, telling him that he still needed to say goodbye to all his other students. As she pulled on one of his arms, she felt his strength had left him and he was no longer breathing. Together, Dante, Arnov, Vihaan, and Myla were silent. Ardie, who was crawling her way towards everyone, stopped a couple meters short when she saw what happened. That was when the dark clouds filled the sky and the torrential downpour began. Each drop of rain felt heavy, and as they fell on their skin, they slowly regained memories of their time together in Zenith.